Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into the Russian Revolution today, but we're going beyond the usual stuff. We've got excerpts from the Russian Revolution, History and Memory. It's by Jose M. Faraldo. And it's got me wondering, why is memory so important when we talk about revolutions?
That's a great question to start with. You see, Faraldo, he's arguing that revolutions aren't just about, getting rid of governments. It's way bigger than that. It's about changing how people see the world, their whole worldview.
So it's like creating a story, not just like rewriting history books.
Exactly. It's about controlling the narrative. Faraldo argues that this is really what the Bolsheviks were good at. To control the future, you have to control how people see the past. Take, for example, most people don't even realize there were multiple revolutions in Russia in 1917.
Wait, multiple. I have to admit, my Russian Revolution knowledge might need a little refresher. I thought it was one big thing.
It's a common misunderstanding. You had the February Revolution, which got rid of the Tsar, but then later you have the October Revolution, where the Bolsheviks actually took power.
So is that why everyone focuses on October? Was February just like a warm-up act?
No, not at all. The February Revolution was huge on its own. Faraldo, he really paints a picture of this. Imagine Grand Dukes like having to drive taxis because their whole world was turned upside down. And intellectuals, they were out on street corners arguing about the future of Russia. Grand Dukes driving cabs. Can you imagine?
Wow, talk about a total societal shift. But if February was so important, why don't we hear more about it?
Well, Faraldo, he uses this phrase, Febrero apenas tiene memoria, which means basically February barely has a memory. And that was no accident. The Bolsheviks worked hard to make people forget about February.
Really? How do you even do that? Was it like bonfires and burning books?
More complex than that. They were pretty clever. They knew that symbols were powerful. Like when they changed the name of St. Petersburg to Leningrad, it wasn't just a name change. It was about connecting the city to Lenin, to their ideology.
Ah, I see. A strategic move. So it's not even erasing the past, it's replacing it with a new version, one they made up.
Exactly. And they did this everywhere, even with music. They used revolutionary themes, but mixed them with classical music.
Oh, interesting. So they were blending the old with the new.
Yes. It gave this feeling of like everything's connected, but subtly pushing their ideas at the same time. By controlling what people saw, heard, even celebrated, they created a story that made their rules seem, well, legitimate. And it meant other viewpoints, they just disappeared.
It's amazing how much history and memory are connected. But, thinking about Russia today, do those old memories, the ones the Bolsheviks worked so hard to create, do those still matter, or have things moved on?
Well, it's tricky. I mean, Russia isn't the Soviet Union anymore, right? So the official story, it's changed. But the thing is, the memory of the revolution, it's still there.
You're saying it's not like everyone's quoting Lenin, but those memories, they haven't disappeared either.
Right. It's more like echoes. You see a street name, a monument, even some cafe called Red October. Those things are still around. But what they mean to people, that's not so simple anymore.
Like these silent reminders of something everyone knows happened, but nobody's quite sure how to think about it now.
Exactly. It's a real mix of feelings in Russia today. On the one hand, there's this pride about the revolution, how big it was, how it changed the world.
Can't deny, they made their mark.
But then there's also this growing understanding of the bad parts, the violence, the people who
Yeah.
disagreed and were silenced. A lot to unpack there.
So it's like recognizing the revolution was huge, it still affects things, but it's not all parades and celebrations, right?
See.
There's this dark side, too.
Right. And that's why how people engage with that memory, even reject it entirely, is so interesting.
Reject it. Okay, now I've got to hear more about that. Who's rejecting the Russian Revolution?
Well, think about the Ukrainian Euromaidan revolution back in 2014. That was a huge deal. And a big part of it was Ukrainians saying, we don't want that October 1917 legacy.
Wow, to reject a part of their history that big. That really says something. Why do that? What's going on there?
It shows how much power that old narrative still has, how it can cause conflict even now. For Ukrainians, rejecting October 1917, it was about saying, we're different. We have our own future, and it's not the one the Bolsheviks wanted.
So they're taking back their own story, making a statement.
Exactly. It proves that how we see history, it's not set in stone. Things like the Russian Revolution, we keep looking back at them, but our view changes depending on what's happening in the world today.
It's like those echoes from the past. They have very real consequences now.
Absolutely. And understanding how the Russian Revolution's memory was shaped, well, it helps us see how stories get made, how they change, and how they still affect us.
That Ukrainian example, that really gets you thinking about how powerful these stories from the past are, even now. But, we've been digging deep into this whole memory thing, how it gets built around events like the Russian Revolution.
Yeah.
So what's the takeaway? Why does this matter, like, in our everyday lives?
See, that's the thing about history. It's not just dates and names. It's about understanding why things are the way they are now. Even in this day and age, when everything's happening so fast, it still matters.
So you're saying those echoes of the Russian Revolution, they're still shaping how we see the world, how we understand stuff like, I don't know, power, change, even just reading the news.
Absolutely. Think about it. This idea of making a narrative, controlling the story, that's more important than ever now, right? With so much information flying around, it's easy to get pulled in.
Yeah, kind of scary when you put it like that. So how do we, like, protect ourselves? How do we make sure we're not just believing any good story we hear, especially when there's so much coming at us all the time?
It goes back to what we were saying before. Think critically. Don't just accept what you see. Ask yourself, who is telling this story? Why are they telling it this way? Who benefits from me believing this version? Whose voices aren't we hearing?
Like, we all have to be detectives of information now.
Exactly. When you understand how memory is built, how easy it is to, manipulate, you start to see through things. You don't just take everything at face value. You want all sides of the story.
So it's like this deep dive on the Russian Revolution. It's actually a lesson in how to understand, like, all information, being smarter about what we consume.
I like that. It's about realizing that history, it's not finished. It's an ongoing conversation, and
Right.
we're all part of it by how we deal with the information we get.
And hopefully, by being those detectives, asking those questions, we can maybe create narratives that are, well, more complete, more honest, and really show how complex the world is.
Well said. It's about having a healthy amount of skepticism, remembering every story has more than one side, more than one way to see it.
And on that note of staying curious, questioning what we hear, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. It's been an amazing journey through history, memory, and how much they still affect us today.
It's been a pleasure exploring all this with you.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep digging deeper into the stories that shape our understanding of the world, past and present. We'll be back soon with another deep dive.